China makes a big splash as President for Life Xi Jinping delivered his opening speech at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit today, September 5th, 2024. President Xi said China is ready to deepen cooperation with African countries in industry, agriculture, infrastructure, trade, and investment over the next 3 years. The Chinese government is willing to provide financial support amounting to $50.7 billion.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that since Simonstown and Boulders. Folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa.
Headlines are all over the place today, celebrating that China's Xi promises $50 billion for Africa, wants to create 1 million jobs. Chinese leader Xi Jinping on Thursday, September 5th, 2024, pledged over $50 billion in financing for Africa over the next 3 years, promising to deepen cooperation in infrastructure and trade with the continent as he addressed Beijing's biggest summit since the pandemic. Over half of that will be in credit, is what Xi said, with $11 billion in various types of assistance as well as $10 billion through encouraging Chinese firms to invest. So most of this largesse is lending. Lending? That's the same thing African elites are consistently moaning about when they attack the World Bank and the IMF. Let's see how much, if any, pushback comes from those elites on Beijing making loans, not grants. And they're going to encourage Chinese firms to invest. Encouraging them. Well, that pretty much guarantees that money will be coming, but those companies will be owned by Chinese for the profit and benefit of Chinese and Chinese shareholders, not Africans. Now, this package amounts to $11 billion in grants, or less than $4 billion a year. That total is in line with decreased Chinese foreign direct assistance over the past decade. The past half decade, I should say. This is a significant drop from a decade ago. It's not surprising given China is to deal with its struggling domestic economy. When looked at objectively, this is not nearly as generous as Xi is trying to portray. It's at this point that hate wankers will start furiously tapping away on their keyboards to scream in response to my commentary here with comments like, "Get your nose out of Africa, worry about your own country," or the always entertaining, "Shut up," usually followed by some racist or derogatory term directed at me. "At least China cares, it helps Africans. What has America ever done for Africans?" Yeah, well, a history lesson in America's largesse to Africans is something that I'll save for another day. Contemporary efforts are much more apropos to discuss here. The U.S. has maintained a consistent level of foreign direct assistance, or grant money, of around $8 billion per year annually since 2009, when Obama came in office. Even under the corrupt Biden regime in 2024, Americans still gave Africans $7.5 billion in direct foreign assistance. Now, that's nearly twice what Xi has just promised to deliver annually over the next 3 years. Now, be sure, Congress and Joe Biden's proxy war in Ukraine, a tiny country of virtually no strategic value to the U.S. with only 44 million people, dwarfs that annual figure, especially when you match it against 1.3 billion Africans, 44 million Ukrainians, 1.3 billion Africans. Crooked Joe and Congress have poured around $200 billion into his failed conflict to distract Americans. Now, a potential concern here for the U.S. in all of this is Xi upping the ante when it comes to security cooperation. The Chinese leader pledged $141 million in grants for military assistance to the continent. He failed to share the time frame, however. Is this annually, over the 3 years? That remains to be seen. But even divided by 3, it's a significant amount, though it does trail U.S. grant funding significantly across Africa. Beijing will provide training for 6,000 military personnel and 1,000 police and law enforcement officers. All right. Also present at FOCAC was United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who told the African leaders assembled that growing ties between China and the continent could drive the renewable energy revolution. Something's never changed, demonically obsessed with climate change over there at the United Nations. Now, Gutierrez continued, China's remarkable record of development, including on eradicating poverty, provides a wealth of experience and expertise. Well, that's true. Chinese have lifted over 600 million people out of abject poverty. It's an impressive record. But the China model hardly applies to African countries. For instance, Senegal has no corrupt sugar daddy in the form of Bill Clinton paving the way for access to global markets with entry to the World Trade Organization. Now, that's access the Chinese can and have then exploited through industrial espionage, copyright theft, trademark infringement, protectionism, and just their sheer economies of scale, something African countries could never hope to achieve. Also, most African governments lack the positive control over their population that the communists in Beijing enjoy. This gives them the ability to confiscate, demolish, and imprison at will. A very powerful tool to push economic development. So the China model is not an apt one for most African states. Now, African heads of state gleefully announced deals on the margins of FOCAC. Nigeria and China signed a joint statement agreeing to deepen cooperation in infrastructure, including transportation, ports, and free trade zones. Free trade zones. Let me translate that in English for you. Places where the Chinese do business and pay no taxes, and all the money goes back to China. Now, following meetings on Wednesday, Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema had said he worked out a deal between Zambia's state-owned power company Zesco and Beijing's Power China to expand the use of rooftop solar panels in his country. So, Zesco is going to lessen dependence on its grid and make less money by putting more solar panels on. I get the point. Tanzanian misogynist President Samia Suluhu Hassan obtained a commitment from Xi to push for new progress on a long-delayed $1 billion railway project connecting Zambia to the coast of Tanzania. Now, there were some other developments of note. On trade, Beijing says it'll open its markets to 33 least developed countries in Africa, which will enjoy zero tariffs on all Chinese products. Now, this was reported in the South China Morning Post. I'm a little confused by this. What exactly does that mean? On Chinese products? What Africans want and need is something akin to the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act that the U.S. generously provides to Africa. Duty-free access for African products exported to China, not the inverse. You need the tariffs to be gone for the things that Africans ship to China. That'll help Africans, kind of like they have access in America. On governance, China will help train African officials to improve governance. Beijing will build 25 African research centers and invite 1,000 African officials and politicians to China to learn about modern governance. Oh, yay! Let's get excited about communists spreading their corrupt, liberty-crushing oppression across the continent of Africa. Oh, yeah. I'm really excited about that one. Now, other initiatives include sending $1 billion in emergency food relief, building 30 green energy products, and sending 500 agricultural experts and 2,000 medical practitioners to the continent. Now, no time frame is given for any of this, but that is an interesting and positive development that could help a lot of people in Africa out. But it's not just politicians present at FOCAC 2024. There's also private sector business leaders as well. Hundreds of African political and business leaders filed into China's Great Hall of the People on Thursday, eager to forge new partnerships, sign contracts, and make industry connections. Business is business. We'll buy from anywhere. In China, the price is right, says Abakar Tahir Musa, a Chadian construction firm owner. We buy everything from China. Lights, air conditioning, wires. The only thing we get elsewhere is cement, said a housing developer from war-torn Burkina Faso. Well, so you import everything and export all your hard currency. How does that grow your economy? It doesn't. Folks, what does all this mean? Well, all in all, China appears to be seeking to re-engage in a more significant way with Africa after retreating somewhat the past few years. Much of their effort hinges on making money off Africans with loans and through mineral exploitation. However, desperate African elites will grasp the nettle and praise the Chi-Coms for their generosity. In the interest of fairness, at least China is making a big deal about Africa, albeit mostly a big propaganda deal. But perception is often a reality for most people. China need only look to be doing a lot to win the long game here. So $50 billion in aid over 3 years. Break it down. $16 billion a year. But most of that's in loans and then private investment from corporations. Only about $4 billion, less than that, is in direct foreign direct assistance, grant money, which is half what the United States alone does. So, Europe, Japan, and the U.S. all do a lot for Africa, but their public relations or their propaganda game is very much lacking. And the Chinese are getting very good at this. And so people praise China for their actions. And to be fair, China deserves a lot of credit for re-engaging with Africa and doing it at this level. But it's not nearly as impressive or generous as the Chinese would like you to believe. There you go, folks. Thanks a lot. Catch you next time. Cheers.